Great. I would like to give a brief introduction. Welcome to the Caregiver Burnout Panel. It is March 3rd, and the United Leukodystrophy Foundation is thrilled to have our panelists offer some information on how to recognize burnout and how to combat burnout as you are caring for your loved one with leukodystrophy. I want to give a reminder to our friends that this session is being recorded and will be posted to YouTube after the session ends. So later on this afternoon, you will see this presentation joining our YouTube channel. And one additional disclaimer before I get started with introduction to the panelists is that we will be talking about some heavy topics today, and we would like to remind everyone that it is very important to recognize that seeking professional help if you are in mental crisis is very important, and we will be giving you some resources today to handle that when and if your burnout gets to a point where you may need to seek professional help. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first panelist. Her name is Marla.
Thank you so much, Kaylee, and welcome everybody. My name is Marla Chaplot, and I live in a very small rural community in Ontario. It's called Kincardine. There's 6,000 people here. We are 3 hours west of Toronto, which is one of the major cities here in Canada. So we're not anywhere close to any major hub, but it's good enough for us. It's a beautiful area to raise a family. So I also wanted to let you know I am a caregiver to my son, Aiden. He is 25 years old, and he's, brought a lot of joy to our lives. We have 2 other children as well. We have a daughter who is 27 years old, and we have another son who is younger, and he's 23 years old. My other job when I am actually not caregiving to Aiden is as a pharmacist, and my husband and I both job share a full-time position so that one of us can always be at home when Aiden is home here with us. The challenges that we have found that have led to burnout are basically trying to wear so many hats. I try to be the best wife to Ron. I try to be the best pharmacist to our patients. Of course, being both a mother and a caregiver to Aiden, and being a mother to our other 2 children. And then last but not least, being a friend to everybody, the family members I mentioned, as well as other, friends. And for many, as well as I notice for myself, something usually has to give, and it's usually your own personal care that gives. Another thing that I found we have to contend with is just constant worry. We're always worrying about when is that next seizure or potentially next choking, etc., and watching that continued progression. So it is really challenging. And then as well, wondering what effect is all this having on his siblings. So on a lighter note, some of the hobbies that I like to partake in, I like to curl, I like to bike, play tennis, the new whole thing pickleball that's been, taking everywhere by storm. I love curling up and watching movies and knitting as a pastime. And from there, I'm going to pass it on to David Flores.
Thank you, and good afternoon. My name is David Flores, born and raised in Chicago. My wife, Marcy, and Marcy's actually a board member on the ULF. We live southwest of the heart of Chicago, meaning downtown. So we're about a good 30 miles away from the center of the city of Chicago. Early life, real quickly. Like I said, I was born and raised in the city of Chicago, moved around a little bit, joined the military, spent 4 years as a Marine, active duty. Growing up in the city of Chicago, I had a passion for music. Here in Chicago, it's called house music. A lot of people call it EDM, unks music, however you want to put that. That's my love and passion. That's one of my hobbies, which I really don't get to do much that often because, I'm a husband, father, half caregiver. I do work a lot. Josh was diagnosed at an early age with 4-H syndrome. We just kind of, Marcy and I just kind of dive in there and, take care of him, sometimes put our needs or put his needs before our own, which is, it's important to have your own needs as well. Yeah, I am selflessness. I'm always trying to think about others before myself when it comes to being generous, caregiving. Always trying to think about how other people are feeling. If I'm feeling a certain way, what if someone else is feeling that way, or what if Josh is feeling that certain way? So I always try to stay involved with his health and as well as his mental health, and I always try to think about my wife too as well, how she's feeling and what she's going through, and asking if she's okay and things like that. Other than being a husband, father, grandfather, my job is I'm a utility worker. I work for the gas company in the city of Chicago. I've been there 6 years. I absolutely love my job. I love helping people. I always tell people, their safety is my number one priority. And that's where my always thinking about other people first before my own needs is just making sure that people are healthy or they're safe. But other than that, that's pretty much the story of me, and I'll pass it along to Margaret. Sorry.
Well, I could have got through that whole screen and you guys wouldn't have seen anything. So I live in Ohio, the great state of Ohio. I am a wife, a GG, and a caregiver to my husband, John, who has AMN. He was diagnosed in 1989. So it's been a long haul with John. He's done wonderful. We've been married for 42 years. For those of you who know my husband, he's as stubborn and obstinate, so I think it's got him quite far. But along with that, our loves are our grandkids, and I have that posted on my slide here. We have 5 now. Our last grandchild does have the genetic ALD gene, and he was caught through the newborn screening in Ohio, which I sat on the panel to get that going in our state. So a much needed thing to have. So my go-tos for stress relief, I almost hate to say this because sometimes work is a stress relief for me. So when I'm not caregiving or being a mom or being a GG, I am working in the field of law enforcement. I am an investigator that goes out and investigates cases in my county of neglect and abuse. So I kind of have a high stress job too. So it's kind of funny to say that, but it's a balance. When I'm not doing work or I just want some me time, you can find me in my garden. And I've got a big garden. I do a lot of canning and a lot of things with my hands. I tease people and say, it's really my hands in the dirt that give me that stress release sometimes that I just need, that little getaway. And I put a quote up here on my screen that I really, really like. There are only 4 kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, and those who will be caregivers, and those who will need a caregiver. It kind of hits all facets of everything that we do in our life right now. So on ending that, I'm going to pass this along to one of my favorite couples, and that's Roger Losi and his beautiful wife.
Hi, my name's Roger Losi, and my wife Joanne and I live in Oswego, New York. That's about 30 miles north of Syracuse, and if you go any further than that, you end up in Lake Ontario, so I don't recommend that. It's pretty cold right now. I retired after 50 years of work in the nuclear industry, and so right now I get to be with my wife a lot more. She's also retired, so we get to spend a lot more time together. Joanne was first diagnosed with leukodystrophy. Actually, we met in 1995, and at that time, neither one of us had heard of leukodystrophy, could probably spell it without looking it up in the dictionary. And back then, I don't think we had Google and all those things to use quite as much. And she started to have some balance issues, started to get some surgeries done on her feet and her legs and different things like that. And finally, in 2005, she received her first diagnosis as having leukodystrophy, which, by the way, she received from Strong Hospital in Rochester, New York, the neurology department there. They put us in contact with Johns Hopkins, who then told us about ULF and the ULF conferences and that type of thing. And we have found that to be really a fantastic way to learn about the disease, to learn about different techniques and different things that have gone on by going to the ULF conferences. When we first started going together, like I said, Joanne we were just like any other couple. She had no issues, no crutches, no canes, nothing. And as we went along in about 2013, she progressed through canes and forearm crutches to being in a wheelchair. And now she's in a wheelchair all of the time. She can't really walk. She can transfer from chair to a wheelchair, or from her wheelchair to commode or bed, but really cannot walk at all. However, we're fortunate enough to have a wheelchair accessible van that has transfer seats in it, so she can transfer to the driver's seat, has enough mobility in her legs that she can do that. So up until about a year ago, she continued to work, and she was the executive director of the Oswego Food Pantry Human Concerns. That kept her busy and occupied. And that gave me a period of time each day that I didn't need to worry about watching over her, I guess, or making sure she didn't fall. She was somewhere else. Not saying the thoughts didn't go through my mind, but I'm a lot like Margaret in that my recreation comes in getting on the John Deere tractor and mowing about 3 acres of lawn, or getting in a DAV van and taking veterans to the Syracuse VA hospital or to the Oswego outpatient clinic, going to our church and working on different things, just to have a break, not to be spending every waking hour thinking about what can I do next? What will I need to do next? So it's my opinion that every caregiver lives an entirely different world. There are people that have probably a lot more intense requirements as being a caregiver. They need to do a lot more time looking over their person. Joanne is a lot like John Halter. She can be a little stubborn also, very determined. And she will sort of push me out of the way because she wants to do it. Even though sometimes I know that, well, I could do that a lot easier and a lot faster. So
well, I turned my volume down.
My belief is what I need to do is just to make sure she does it safely. So that's my spiel for now.
Thank you, Roger. That now brings us to just having a little discussion about how you can easily or best recognize when you or a close loved one of yours might be actually experiencing some of the burnout signs. So, as Roger alluded to, we are all going to experience burnout differently. That the burnout signs and symptoms that I or my husband Ron might have felt are also going to be different even between the two of us, even though we live in the same household. And also that even that if you are experiencing like your caregiving duties are 24/7. It's not related to, wow, you have more caregiving duties, so therefore you might be more at risk of experiencing burnout. Even somebody whose caregiving duties is, I hate to say mild, but less than some of the other and less extreme, they still might experience burnout, and it might be just as serious or more so. So please be aware that it's not how intense your caregiving is, it's just that you need to be aware of the signs and know yourself. So to go on further, so to know whether or not you are experiencing, or more so for others, to know if you are experiencing burnout, you need to know what the original character of that person is. So if you are an introvert, you hardly see friends, and you can see one of the signs in recognizing burnout is, not going out, withdrawal from family and friends. Well, if you were an introvert, that really doesn't apply. But if you are all of a sudden feeling, if you are an extrovert, you like to go out, you like to always be socializing with friends, family, and all of a sudden you're now saying, you know what, I really don't want to go to this anymore. I don't have the energy. You're feeling tired all the time, despite even sleeping very well. Those are signs that maybe some depression is taking hold. And it could even be the opposite, where you're sleeping so little because you have a constant state of worry. All of those things, the constant state of worry, the depression, is all going to start wreaking havoc on your body. Maybe you're going to become really angry at the slightest thing that doesn't make any sense to you. Maybe you're going to start feeling very hopeless and helpless. And I really hope it never gets to that point, because that is a very, very gloomy state to be living in. And then if you don't take action, your body's going to start derailing. You're going to start getting sick more frequently. You're going to start, if you don't address these health issues, it's just going to be, rolling on and on into something way more serious. And it could get to the point of pure exhaustion. One key factor to remember is, if you don't take care of yourself, how are you going to be expected to take care of another individual? So, keep that in mind. Take good care of yourself. And then we'll bring us to the next slide, which is basically, as Keely alluded to, if you ever feel yourself getting to a point where you're wanting to harm yourself because you're not happy with how you are acting as a caregiver, or you're unhappy with your situation, or if you ever feel that you're at risk of harming other people, in particular, the person you are caregiving, that is something that you need to get help right away. We are not therapists on this call, but we are trying to help you learn how you can maybe, help yourself to get some help. Sometimes we see a lot of people that want to self-medicate, whether it be with prescription medications or whether it be with drugs or alcohol, just to help calm their nerves at the end of a day. That can lead to a lot of spiraling downhill as well. So just be mindful of those warning signs. And also, if you've had to experience ever in your caregiving some tragic event that, perhaps in our case, I can explain that we have witnessed choking with Aiden several times. And we've actually had to develop perform the Heimlich on him on more than one occasion. It's been myself mostly, but it's also been my youngest, so Aiden's little brother, who's come ahead and performed the Heimlich. It's quite traumatic, so I'm trying to get through this. So anytime when we have our family dinners, if anyone has this funny sound when we're eating, a lot of us are on edge. So that kind of leads into this post-traumatic stress disorder, that it kind of leaves everybody jumpy. So just be aware that that is a possibility of things that you might be experiencing as well, and to seek help if need be. In our slide, I have a list of crisis hotline numbers. I don't know who is on the call, if it's all American, but this is from any country because it is different depending on where you are in globally. And know that number, that if you do need help, seek it. And it could be as easy as getting a family friend. Sometimes it's hard to do a family member to get help because they're experiencing similar things, but a close friend. But it also, if it gets to the point of dire, you need to seek professional help. And that leads us to helping. I think Margaret will explain some of the ways that she can suggest on how to combat burnout.
So if I could just jump in for a second, I want to remind everyone, please feel free to enter thoughts, questions as we go along. Please enter them in the chat, and then I'll be keeping an eye on those. And if the opportunity presents itself to ask the questions to the panelists, I will do so. But before we move on to Margaret, I do want to just get a little bit of insight from our panelists. My first question, directed to David and Roger. Do you think there's a difference in burnout between moms and dads, or men and women, and in how burnout manifests? And what are your thoughts on that, David and Roger?
Roger, if you don't mind, I'd like to go first. I think there is a difference between the way men and women handle things, or as far as burnout, crisis, panic situations. I tend to try to, I guess, think things through, figuring out solutions rather than panicking. As far as burnouts, I don't think that I've ever felt that I've been burnt out. Maybe I've experienced it, but haven't actually embraced it. For me, it's just take the situation and just keep moving forward, keep pushing forward. I think I actually just felt that burnout this morning. Woke up and I felt there was so many things to do, between dishes, laundry, putting things away, putting this away, putting that away, finishing up what, my wife started. I felt tired when I woke up, and I'm like, man, is this what burnout is? But I just moved on and kept going on about the morning and getting everything done. And yeah, I do definitely think it's a lot different because my approach is I'm not going to sit and sulk or just think about what I could do, and instead I'm just going to do it and not worry about it. Always asking other people how, like I said earlier, asking other people how they feel rather than my own self. But to combat that burnout, I do get 3 days off, to myself while my wife and son are at school and work. I still enjoy video games. That's the kid in me. I enjoy playing music whenever I can, or just going out and getting some leisure time. One thing on my bucket list is teaching myself how to roller skate. Never learned as a kid. I started doing that. I need to get back to it as soon as, the weather starts turning warmer. And I like to get in some range time, for those of us that like to get, go to the range. That's what I like to do as well. And I have a couple of friends that are off on the same day as I am, or coworkers. They like to partake as well. So getting in that time for yourself is also key, and it's very important. And as a man, we were always taught never to share your feelings, or don't share your feelings, with that sense of feeling vulnerable or that weakness. I disagree with that. It took me a long time to accept the fact that Josh had an illness. And once I came to terms with that, that improved everything else. My family life, my marriage, my relationship with my children. And I can honestly say it's way better now than it was before, because if you don't embrace that, it's going to cause a lot of problems within yourself and the relationships with your marriage and your family members. And I'll hand it over to Roger.
I guess I have even a broader perspective of that. I know that when I started in the nuclear industry, I would guess out of I don't know how many thousand men that were in that industry, there may be a token woman somewhere that they allowed in. Today, I'm happy to say that has changed a lot. It's not quite 50-50 yet. However, it's going that way a lot. And part of it was the stereotype of women are good for this and men are good for that. And I think that our current upbringing it's hard to say mom and dads anymore, or men and women. I think it's people, and it's how the individual was raised, the things that they are better at, that they can deal with, can cope with better. So I think every individual, whether they're a man or a woman, is going to respond to different situations. They're going to either uh, fall into the burnout category, or be more susceptible to burnout, or recover faster from burnout because of the individual makeup of them, not necessarily because they're a man or a woman. And I think we see that in every industry, and I think caregiving is one of the things that it also applies to.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, David and Roger. And then Margaret, if you'd like to enter into combating burnout.
Combating burnout. Wow. I look at just this statement and I picture myself getting up in the morning and putting that armor on to face the day. And that's really not what it's like. Again, we've had 40 years of this. So the decline with my husband was more towards the past 6 years. And when I look at this first bullet and it says ask for and accept help, oh my gosh, that's got to be the hardest thing ever. We didn't for a long, long time. And we struggled and struggled to complete those tasks that you were talking about, David, that just is in a household. And then sooner or later, I just started reaching out, and friends were there wanting and willing to help. But the key is we've got to ask for it. We really have to know our limitations before that burnout hits you. And you got to ask for it. And you got to practice it. So even if there's times that you don't need a lot of help, practice that with your friends, especially when they reach out and say, hey, I hear you're doing this weekend. How about I come over and give you a hand? Instead of saying, no, we got it. Because I think that was a catchphrase for me for years. Like, no, I got this. I got this. Well, you know what? Sometimes it's just a good idea to ask. And, people are willing to help you. So the other part of that is focus on what you can do, one task at a time, right? So if you got this huge picture and this huge list, because I was such a list person in my younger years. Sometimes those lists don't even get made now. Our tasks are determined on sometimes how John feels when he wakes up in the morning. So my task for the day might be completely different if it's going to be a bad day or if it's going to be a good day. Set some realistic goals for yourself. At this age, again, that's a little hard to do because my mind says I can do all these things. But as we age, our bodies don't hold up to a whole lot of the stuff. And again, I live on a farm, so it's a little different for us. So I'm always thinking about, wow, that's another kind of chore we probably should be getting rid of. Get connected with family, friends, social platforms. There's lots of caregiver support groups on Facebook. I'm amazed. We have all these smart technology in our hands. On our iPhones, we can find podcasts that actually can engage the caregiver in small group type talks. They're really nice. If you have time, join a support group, a faith family. I have a pretty strong foundation with my faith, and I do have a small group that I get together with ladies, and that's probably twice a month that I'm able to squeak out some time in the evening, and that's nice. A lot of social service connections have that, and sometimes hospitals offer different types of support groups. Now, we are absolutely not going to have a leukodystrophy support group in any of our states unless we live by DeKalb and Keeley would start one for us. But you may have similarities in some of the support groups that you can go to for spinal disorders or, and I'm talking adults mainly, possibly MS groups or ALS groups. So groups can be a great source of comfort for you. Many caregivers end up feeling guilty and run down over the similar problems, like how are we going to manage all this stuff, and that overwhelming sense of wanting to do everything for the person that you're caring for. I like how you said it, David. You guys are a team. That's awesome. And I think taking care of children versus taking care of a spouse may have some differences in the long run, only because we're adults and we're married, but it's still a team, and we have to face it together. I'm looking at my notes here. I'm gonna skip over that. So it's kind of redundant about seeking social support, because we talk about social media platforms, or even in person, just to find an outlet. Again, we're talking about caregiver support groups that might be in your town. I know one resource could be local area agencies have groups that can get together, or contact what I call a omnibudsman or an eldercare navigator to help you find some resources for yourself. I actually like the next one a lot. Take care of your health, because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of someone else. And at the end of the day, I always said, my 4 key ingredients would be, for me at least, exercise, diet, sleep, and some social activities that you really like to unwind and kind of do something different. That's that little time away, or even just playing with a video game, like David had said. I think Roger said it well too, with getting on that tractor and getting outside. That's where I wish I lived in warm weather a little bit more, and I could go out and I could garden more. One of the other things is seeing your healthcare professional. So if you're experiencing any kind of health concerns, you should call your doctor and figure out whether it's just something that is coming up that's could be nothing, or something that needs to be addressed with your care professional. Working together as a balance, we kind of said that already. Parents as a united force, and a spousal relationship that's kind of co-parenting. The next one's kind of hard. We talk about releasing guilt, resentment, and anxieties that we have with our situations. That's hard. I don't know if it happens all the time. The guilt that people feel, and it's hard to let go of that. But that's where we go back, where you've got to communicate the way you're feeling. If something is really bothering you, or you're having anxiety of your situation, it might be time to talk to a health professional. Surround yourself with support. And this is great. Support doesn't mean your family sometimes. Support means friends, means that group, that tribe, those sisters. I talk about a circle of girls that I've been connected with since I've started in law enforcement. And we've always called ourselves the Yaya Sisters, but they're my group. They're my go-to group. I can call them at any time, and we can chat about nonsense stuff, or we can chat about the really hard stuff. But it helps with an outlet that I have. Find a way to include joy in your life. Because we all have it. There's those, I have so many fun memories. And that's our joy. I had someone look at the slides for this webinar, and they had looked at the picture that I posted of John and I, and that's kind of the silliness that John has always had with me. He, it's kind of sticking that tongue out, and his nickname of Grumps for Grandpa. It's the joy that we find in our life, in our little circle of our family. So those are just some things. I mean, there's probably lists and lists and lists that we can go to, but this is just a small snapshot of what we have to help ourselves. So this is respite and options that we have for respite. To me, I always like to define what things are. And respite is like a pause or a break. So in my line of work, when I'm doing an investigation, one of my prevention measures might be to that parent or that couple is to let someone else come in and relieve them of a couple hours of that intensity of caring for their child or their adult son or daughter, and letting someone else come in and kind of help you with that portion, and you going and finding that joy that we talked about in the past slide. So what does respite look like for parents versus spouses? For parents, again, with my job, I know that we can get caregivers that come into the house and provide the same care that the parents would. For spouses, okay, that's going to be like different. So depending on how ill your spouse is and how much care your spouse needs, that may look like me going to get my hair cut and having some me time, or me getting my nails done in my house. It could mean when John's having a bad day that I ask somebody to stop by, or I ask them to call while I'm gone, just so I'm having that extra eyes on. And it could be farther down the road that we actually have someone come in and assist with some in-house care. And that would be my break to either get out for a little bit and do something, or do one of those tasks that I have to do. Now, there's adult care centers and there's programs that are available usually in every state. For Ohio, there are a lot of adult daycares through nursing homes and through the waiver programs. We're talking about short-term nursing homes. That could be for something that even as simple if I had to go through a surgery, but I couldn't take care of my husband, we could have placement into a short-term nursing home. So respite from or with your spouse, I'd have to say sometimes our vacations have been respite, even though we've taken our work with us and our care, is 24/7. Sometimes when we go do something together, that can also be a time for us to like improve on just time together that isn't spent taking care of somebody. It might be that joy that we find again. So these are just some of the why don't you turn that slide, Keely? I don't know if I had a third one or no. There we go. So I did pull some links, and I'm hoping that somehow we can make those links available for you.
I don't see it in the chat.
So there's lots of good stuff there. I do partake in the Caregiver Crossing podcast. It's really nice. And there was one other one on there that I really liked too. It was dealing with the caregiver guilt and forgiving yourself. I remember going to a doctor's appointment, my cardiologist actually, because I deal with AFib from time to time when my anxiety gets high. And she looked at me and she said, "Man, you're doing so good. Would you just give yourself some grace?" So give yourself some grace. If you're taking care of someone, give yourself some grace. You're doing a good job. And if it's too much, reach out and talk to somebody. And I'll turn that back over to you, Keely.
Thank you, Margaret. All right, I'd like to open the floor to everyone. If you have questions, if you want to raise discussion points. So to give everybody a second to kind of collect your thoughts. I'd like to ask our panelists, how do you know when you've reached burnout, or what was your breaking point? If you've experienced, if and when you've experienced burnout, what has been your breaking point, and what has made you realize, okay, I'm burning out?
I think for me, and I think basically for Ron and I could probably speak for both of us, is that you don't even realize that you're in burnout. You just, as David had alluded to, you just keep going because you have to. When you need to care for somebody 24/7, as is the case in our house, we need to help Aiden do every daily living task. We have to get him dressed. We have to get him out of bed, toilet him, feed him, do physiotherapy. You might get half an hour to an hour in your day that you will feel that he is safe enough to go and walk the dog or what have you. But when you have that sense of, I have to keep going because who else is going to do it? I am blessed that if I feel on edge, then usually both Ron and I are not feeling the same symptoms at the same time. Then, usually the spouse, we're so in tune with each other that they'll say, oh, let me just take over here, and then I can just step away. So I don't know if it's really any one instance. It's often like, it's the needle in that haystack that gave you the problem. It's usually not this major event that you could say, yes, I'm really burnt out. I just can't go any further. It's usually just something really, really, really minute that's happened that you just start snapping, you start getting angry. Your tone can really be sensed in the person that you love, that you're caregiving for. And it's really nice that at least in our house that the other spouse can say, hey, you know what? Let me handle that. And I don't know if that really answered your question, Keely, but.
Sorry, I had to get my
Anyone
video.
else have anything to offer or suggest?
Yes, if I can add to that. I agree with you, Marla, as far as being a half caregiver. I've recognized within myself that I'm home from work after a long day. I still have things to do, what, Marcy didn't really get to do because her days are long too. And I recognize when she's at her, I'm done today and I'll take over and I'll say, okay, you go sit down, you go relax, go lay down. No, there's so much to do. I'll handle it. Even though I've had a long day as well, my commute is probably 2 hours. So my days are looking about 14-hour days. And then to come home and Josh still needs to shower and things need to get done for tomorrow so he can go to school, or dishes are in the sink. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. I got it. It's just trying to recognize your spouse and when they've had enough, or when at the end of the day, they're like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I'm burnt out. All right, I got it. Get some rest. We'll do this all over again tomorrow. There have been times where with incontinence, with Josh, he'll give us an indication that he's needs to be changed. And I'll be laying in bed, my head just hit the pillow, and he's like, okay, I got to get changed. I'll get frustrated, not at him, but the situation. He can sense that. He knows. I'll come back a few minutes later. Josh, I'm sorry. I was a bad dad. I had a moment. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's this illness. And then we'll laugh about it. He'll fake punch me, things like that. I will roll around, and it's just recognizing, and I can't imagine just leaving my wife alone or leaving my family alone because I'm selfish and I'm like, yeah, I can't deal with this anymore. I just can't do that. I don't look at it like that. I just have to be here. I have to be that husband, be that father, because that's who I am. Thank you.
I think that what has also helped in our case is when, at least for me, that if I have ever felt like, oh my gosh, over pent up anxiety, I just step away and give myself a timeout for a minute, 2 minutes, and then come back. And if you can just take that 2 minutes, take some deep breathing exercises, then that helps just get your composure back so that you can then get stepped back in, because it's not that you're mad at your the person you're caregiving. You're, as David said, you're mad at the situation. So that has helped us.
Wonderful. Thank you, Marla. I apologize. I was trying to give Aketi, I hope I'm saying your name correctly, Aketi, is trying to give her some resources in the chat. So thank you all for your insights. Do any of our participants have any questions for our panelists, I'm keeping an eye on the chat, but if you would like to unmute and ask your question yourself, please feel free to do so. Can you give more examples to all of our panelists? Maybe Roger, if you could go first. Can you give examples of what respite looks like for your family between you and Joanne?
Well, here again, we're somewhat different in that Joanne is still very mobile. She can't walk, but in her wheelchair and everything. So a lot of times, going to a play, going out for dinner, she's able to do that. She can take her wheelchair. She can go by herself. Actually, she likes her respite of going out with her girlfriends for breakfast or a lunch. And during that time, I get my break. I get to do what I want to do during that period, whether it's just stay at home and take a deep breath and play with the dogs, or whatever I'd like to do. Also, we have activities. Like I said, I drive the DAV van. For me, I get a kick out of it, and I think David will understand this. I'm taking veterans that I can sit there and joke around with and shoot the bull with about the old days. For me, a long time ago, old days. But, being in the military and stuff like that. So those are the type of things that give me a break. But that doesn't mean that there isn't the time, even though my day isn't as intense as if I had someone to take care of 24/7, that you had to be there for that intense time. It doesn't mean that there isn't the time that it's been a long day. You've been mowing the lawn and it's been 98 degrees and the same humidity, and you come inside and you're hot and you're sweaty, and then it's, hey honey, can you do this for me? And you you get that second that you sort of say, what the throw your hands in the air, but then you say sure, and you go ahead and you do it. But it's that those type of things that can happen, whether you're doing it 24 hours a day or whether you're doing it for a few hours a day, that you have to stay focused. But that's about my skill.
I agree. I just wanted to mention here, I think the first time that I felt like the burnout or the overwhelm, I'm kind of like David. Sometimes you don't even recognize it. You're getting it yourself. But when John had his year of hospitals, like there was one year that literally he spent a half a year in days in the hospital due to UTIs. And it's something we combat a lot with this, with our, this disease, with the men anyway. So I think it was that time that a nurse had kind of pulled me aside and said, Margaret, you need some time. You can't do it all. You can't run in there and fix it all. These are things that just happen and we've got to combat them, but you got to recognize this. So it was about that time that I said, I backed off on some of the things that I normally do and kind of assessed that whole situation again and said, okay, let's back off a little bit and let's regroup. I didn't spend the time in the hospital with John when he was in there a lot. Instead, I would come home and try to get some rest for myself. So that was the first time I kind of recognized that, oh, I'm not doing this right. I'm not helping him in the hospital. They're helping him. So I should probably do something else. So that was a little bit of it. And then as we struggle with other things now that are more task related, just like Roger, John doesn't walk at all anymore. And transfers are a little bit iffy at this point. So we'll go that route. So we get nervous when we go out a lot if he misses that chair when he's transferring or misses other things. He still drives. He still does so many things that make me a nervous wreck, but that's part of him still engaging. So I don't want to take up all the time. We're getting close to the end here, so I'm going to give it back to you, Keely.
Yeah, I would just like to open the floor to our guests, our participants. If you have examples of when you felt like you knew you were burning out, or when you've kind of had that aha moment, or even if you would like to offer suggestions of what you do for your own respite, or where you plan to seek opportunities for respite, if you're a planner ahead like I try to be. Let's see. We have a question in the chat. How do you handle a 40-year-old that is angry at one of the caregivers?
Meaning like husband and wife, or both caregivers are taking care of the one person?
How do you handle a 40-year-old that is angry at one caregiver's the other? He's mad at mom, not dad. Okay. How do you handle a 40-year-old caregiver, or sorry, a 40-year-old that is angry at one caregiver and not the other?
I think that caregivers have different ways of their approach, but I think the caregiving should be the same. I'm thinking, create this repetitive way of how you take care of them. I think first off, both caregivers should be on the same page. The way they care for that person, or whoever the one that's suffering from the illness. That so if they handle it the same approach, let's say, and it's not saying mom's doing something wrong or dad's doing something wrong. It's just they may do things differently, but the end result should be the same. Maybe they should pull themselves aside away from the person they're caregiving and, okay, what's going on? What are you doing and what am I doing? And then maybe create a routine together to where that individual's not upset with one and not the other. Because I'm sure, we handle things differently too. And Josh might be like, really? You're really going to do this? Or, okay, you're both doing it and I'm satisfied with that. I think it's just maybe talking to your spouse, or if that's what I'm getting here, talking to that other person and finding out, okay, they're mad at you, but not mad at me. It doesn't make me a better person, but let's find a common way to approach this and make sure that they're happy with both of us, or they're not mad at any of us. That's just my take.
It also, I wonder if it could be that maybe the one parent is actually undergoing some burnout, and therefore maybe displaying different signs. Maybe that the one who needs the caregiving is noticing that and therefore is mad at that one parent. So that's an opportunity for potentially the other spouse to say, hey, what are some ways that I can help you? Nobody likes to hear that they're not perfect, and none of us are perfect, but I do think that might be a way to recognize that maybe we do need help and I need to just step back for a little bit. Also, knowing for respite, whether it is you're getting respite from your other caregiver to come and give you a break, or in our case, we do have a place where Aiden can go. It's a home that's about an hour and a half from us, and it's a 20-bed place for physically disabled people. It's not a nursing home, because nursing homes, he's only 25, so he would be quite out of his age limit there. And he doesn't live there full time. We don't want him there full time. We want him at home with us as well. But when we do feel that we need a break, sometimes we both have to work at the same time. And therefore, Aiden needs help. So we do drive him up there for that. But one thing we do need to be cognizant of is, regardless of who is doing the caregiving, they may not do it as good as you. And that's okay. You're going to do a better job caregiving. You're going to do a better job at feeding. You're going to do a better job at doing his physio for your person. But if you don't get help and seek assistance from other people, whether you send them to a respite or get somebody to come in, they are not going to do as good a job, because you know the care best. But if you don't seek that help, then you may lead yourself to, burnout.
All right, since we're getting down towards the end of our time, I am going to put a poll up. Like I said at the beginning, we really, really appreciate you participating in these polls. They assist us in making these webinars better and more beneficial for our community, but they also assist us in our grant funding as well. So we would very much appreciate you taking just 1 minute of your time to answer these 2 questions. But by no means am I ending the webinar immediately once you answer the question. We're happy to stay on the line as long as everyone feels that the conversation is going. So in the chat, we have some discussion going on. I don't want to share it out loud just in case it's, you're putting it in the chat for a reason to keep it on the private side. Let's see. Do we have any other questions or any other thoughts from our participants? How about for our panelists? Why don't we do one more round of what do you plan on doing this afternoon as a moment of respite for yourself?
Our oldest son drives and has a car now, and he just decided on a whim this morning, I'm going to take my baby brother out. So he took Josh out to meet our daughter at the zoo, who's with our granddaughter and her husband. So Marcy and I are here. She's currently cooking something. I'm going to offer maybe to play her some music, and then we're just going to enjoy the day. That's our respite. She actually has homework to do. So I may just play some music for her in the background and just maybe enjoy this day and enjoy that time away from him that he gets to enjoy away from us as well, because I'm sure he needs to get away from us. I tell his nurses, yeah, Josh is sick and tired of me, even though he probably isn't, but I'm always in his face and loving on him and telling him I love him and messing with him and talking to him and stuff. So I think we all need that time away from each other. It's okay to have that, though, without feeling guilty.
Wonderful. Thank you, David. Roger, what about you? Anything you and Luann have planned? Joanne?
Actually, we don't have anything planned together right yet, unless, well, maybe we do, and I just haven't asked her about it yet. but I was planning on probably reading a book.
That sounds lovely. What are you reading?
Oh, geez, what's the name of it? It's my sister recommended it, and it's a very old English mystery book, something about the Black Swan.
Oh, okay. All right. Margaret, how about you?
Oh, well, you're going to laugh when I tell you what I'm doing, but it's so nice outside. I'm actually going to go pick up all the garbage in our ditches along our mile frontage that we have, because we're like a cut through and everybody chucks things out the window. So I saw it this morning on the way to church, and I kept on saying, I'm going to get out there and get those cans today. It's nice. So I'm going to borrow one of John's grabbers, because we've got them like all over the house. So
hey, fresh air. That's self-care right there. It's fresh air. And
yeah, and I think he just took the dogs out, because he's like, I got to get out of here. You're telling people our secrets, and I'm like, not really. I'm not.
Wonderful. Thank you, Margaret. And what about you, Marla?
Hi, no set plans. My respite was more yesterday. Aiden was at his lodge and Ron had to work, and I was in a ladies' bonspiel for curling all day yesterday. So without Aiden having been at respite, I would not have been able to do that. So I was really pleased that I had that option. He's still there today. So after this, we'll probably have Ron and I might just cook a meal together and maybe watch a movie.
That sounds wonderful.
Yes.
All right. Well, wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you to all of our panelists for sharing your insights. And I hope everyone felt that the webinar was beneficial. by all means, please never hesitate to reach out to the ULF if you ever have questions. Our general email box is office@ulf.org, and you'll get a response fairly quickly, excuse me. If anyone would like to get in contact with any of our panelists, please email us at office@ulf.org and we'll connect you with our panelists. I don't want to share your guys' email address on YouTube. So reach out either via email or phone number at 815-748-3211, and we'll get you connected and we'll get you hooked up with resources. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.